I'm very delighted that I'm here to talk about government's role in using technology in order to facilitate integration among refugees and members of host community. On my immediate right is Dr. Jan Barski, Research Associate, CityScienceLab, and he will be talking about German government's initiatives and researchers' work in terms of integration refugee with the host community. On my immediate left is Mr. Alain Régnier, Prefect and Interministerial Delegate from French government. And the farther left, Ms. Caroline Guimond, Minister Counsellor of Migration at Embassy of Canada in France. So when we think about integration, it's very important to think about different factors that play. It's an economic factor, socio-cultural factor, and in every single aspect of those factors, you can see how technology played a role in order to satisfy those factors by creating jobs, by connecting refugee through different apps and technology to find job. Or when it comes to kind of socio-cultural, we have seen many applications that are used in order to help refugees to learn language, to learn culture, and even to have a dinner with neighbors in their host member of community in order to learn and share, exchange their experiences. So it is very important to think all these technology and apps, how they are being used by government and how entrepreneurs, that so many of you are here, how they can work with governments in order to scale their program. But in addition, because I'm a little bit cynical person, there have been examples of using technology negatively, not to integrate refugees and members of host community, but also in order to segregate them. We have seen anti-refugee sentiment across Europe that it has been amplified by social media disinformation. So this is a mixture of benefits and negative part of technology that I'm very delighted that we have speakers that they can talk about government's program in order to address that. So I would like to start my first question with just talking what our speakers they're doing in terms of using technology to integrate refugees with a member of host community and how technology play a role in the program.
Okay, thank you for Techfugees for my invitation. In the name of the French government, I'm very happy to say you welcome for all of us who come from these every countries. So this is a new creation, this delegation, since the beginning of this year. The President of the Republic, Emmanuel Macron, wants a new policy for integrate and hospitality. So you know that we are in a troubling time. I want to create new tools with new technologies, and I want to develop a new application named Agir. We can translate Act for Refugees. And we work with the Ministry of Digital. And I think it will be operated next year. So there is other application has been created this year in the region of Lyon, in the center of France. You have an application named HafenCity for language, for French language. I want to develop cooperation with social citizen. Everybody must be involved in this policy. It's the beginning of a new work for me and for the government with a budget. My team is 9 persons. So I have a person who is Azer Simon in charge of digital and climatic change.
Canada, you may know, we have a long history with managing immigration. Last year, the Honorable Minister Hussein, its Minister for Immigration, announced that we would welcome 1 million immigrants between 2018 and 2020. And this would include 140,000 refugees, resettled refugees. This is a lot of people to welcome, and their integration has to be a success. So Canada has invested, and the department responsible for immigration invests close to 1 billion Canadian dollars into integration programs. This is done through in partnership with the provinces, and we have local partners. So I think it's important to understand that we recognize that the central government of Canada is not necessarily the best actor to play into integration. We create framework, policy framework, but we fund actors that are on the ground at the community level, because it's at the community level that integration happens. What we realize is that the integration program we have, which is mostly language, access to the labor force, but also integration into the community, are helpful, but we need to look even before people arrive in Canada. So we're now focusing on pre-arrival preparation. And this is where technology comes into play. If you're doing in-person training in Canada, it's one thing. We do have for refugees in-person training before they come to Canada, but we have also developed an area of tools that gives them a better sense of life in Canada, preparing themselves for work, that are easily accessible through the central website of Canada. Another aspect that we are focusing on is we have a program where citizens can sponsor refugees, and we encourage the community that will be hosting the refugee in Canada to get in touch with the refugee through WhatsApp or whatever works in the field where the refugees are, to initiate contact. We've seen that these early contacts really help make the refugee better understand where they're going to go. And particularly when the destination is a small community, it helps the community also better prepare for the needs of the person who's coming, and it brings success in terms of integration. So technology is used more as a bridge between to help refugee access information. In terms of technology as an end of itself, we have a program that we are piloting right now. You may know under the Global Compact on Migration and Global Compact on Refugees, there's a lot of talks about alternative pathways. These are pathways that people in refugee situation could potentially use to access Canada, for instance. So we're piloting on the technology side with Talent Beyond Boundaries, the UNHCR, the industry in Canada. We're testing the training of talent right in the Middle East, developing a pool of talent who are then destined directly to employers in Canada. So it's exploring other means to access Canada that is not necessarily through the traditional refugee channel. And so this one, the link with technology is that it is in the technological field. The government is a big institution. So we have, when we develop systems, they're big systems. Our operational platform is a combination of 10 different databases, and it takes us years to develop. So we're not into the startup model. We partner with our other organization, grassroots ones, who are more able to be innovative. But what has happened with the work you do in the field? Because a few years ago, I remember telling my colleagues, we need to develop tools for refugees that can be used on a phone. And everybody looked at me and says, yeah. And because I could observe what was happening, particularly in Southeast Asia, today they're realizing that we're probably 8 years behind as a government into developing tools for refugees. So I didn't have the credibility. They didn't listen to me when I told them to do that. But the work you do, showing that refugees, like anyone else, can use technology to learn, to move around, to better their future, has helped us. Now we have a reform going on of our integration program, and technology as a means to bridge people, but as an end of itself to help access the market in AI in Montreal, for instance. There's really a shift in the perception of how we can serve refugees, and that is really a result of all your great work, and I want to salute that. So thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm very grateful that Caroline has mentioned the local and also the indirectedness of help sometimes. So to specify what Roya said in the beginning, I'm not exactly going to tell you about the German government's actions, but Hamburg's. As a quick background, not all of you have to know it, but Germany is a federalized country, therefore each of the states that compose the republic has a decent amount of autonomy. And Hamburg, the city of Hamburg, is actually on its own such a state, so just city-state within Germany. And that means that the local authorities of Hamburg have actually quite a good grasp of, they can make decisions pretty in a precise way, if that so happens. And my institution, we are part of the HafenCity University in Hamburg. My lab was established by the city of Hamburg as a sort of a research arm or branch of the municipality that was supposed to be a research unit, but tackle Hamburg's problems. And immediately, coincidentally, right after the foundation of our lab, the famous summer of 2015 happened. And the first problem to tackle that was commissioned to us by the municipality of Hamburg was dealing with refugee accommodation. So what we did, this was a project called Finding Places. I will allow myself a moment of advertising. I brought a couple of dozens of brochures relating to that project. I put them upstairs next to where the drinks are served, next to one of the blue light lamps, so anyone interested can grab a copy. This project was really quickly organized, and in a nutshell, what we did was we organized 40 workshops with residents, with really local residents, where people were invited to participate in discussion on what plots of land that are owned by the municipality can be dedicated to the creation of new accommodation for refugees. This was really an emergency project. It took only 3 months, but a couple of hundred local residents managed to take part in it. And some accommodations have actually been built on the sites that were suggested and agreed upon by residents. So I wanted to say that in this case, tech, because we did it in an interactive way, technologically speaking, managed to achieve this particular goal and also de-emotionalize the situation. So relatively in Hamburg, the influx of refugees in 2015 and 16, relatively again, went smoothly. But also, I will take a moment to tell you about a project that, because this is the past, I want to also mention the future, because we are going to carry out a different project. We have just been informed that we have been granted this project. This is an EU, part of an EU program. We are going to be creating a digital tool which is connected to cockpits and dashboards, or in other words, interfaces, that are supposed to connect the 3 parties involved in refugee integration on site, namely public authorities, migrants themselves, and volunteers or helpers. And in this project, we intend to create a platform that will help synchronize work on migrant integration thanks to mobile and just modern technology. And this is also, my last remark, this is also smooth transition to pointing out all 3 levels of public involvement: the local, the national, and the supranational, because the credit for this future project that I mentioned, for it even happening, goes to the European Commission and the research funding.
Thank you to the speakers for letting us know about the programs. So when I think about the programs that, Alain, you mentioned about using applications for language, Caroline, you mentioned about the pre-arrival WhatsApp groups that they can get in touch with each other, and also about how communities, they had a chance to vote where accommodation should happen. There are some kind of, although there are all the positive sides of that, but there are also, when you think about WhatsApp and application, there have been issues of privacy and security that I'm sure yesterday we had a great talk about that. And also when we think about having the other residents to have a voice of where refugees they should be located and accommodated, Hamburg, you mentioned that it went smoothly, but the other parts, they might not go smoothly, right? And then if you want to expand that program around Europe, there might be some sort of like conflict in terms of like being between residents and members of the host community and new arrival. So I was wondering how you can address these kind of challenges and risks that they might come up, that kind of like, of course, the benefits of the program outweigh the negative side of that, but it is also, it's wise to think about all this kind of potential adverse and negative impacts. Thank you.
I have 2 points. The first is, the refugees is a human being. So technology tools are important, but for me the priority is to build a relationship, human relationship between us, who are included, and the other who arrive. So we must combine the benefits of the new tools and also how to be the question of the accompaniment of the person. So I think it's the two things must be together, new tools, and in the same time on the ground, on the local situation, to organize the society for a citizen, to create a new relation between each person who arrive. I think it's very important for me to don't forget the human. And the second point is also human, but the human rights. I think it's important to create a tool application who must respect the human right. So in France, we have a National Commission for Informatic and Liberty. And when we create a new application, we must have the authorization. This authorization is explains that we must respect to use data and to use personal history like migration, what happens, and health level. So I think it's important to think about that. In the respect, also respect the new regulations, GDPi, and all must be compatible with the new technology what we create. So we must create new response based on the relation between human beings and with new application to help us to create this relationship, but not to externalize the welcome, but by the new technology.
So that's really important. Technology has to be the bridge to bring people into contact. In terms of, well, I mentioned government bills, big program, and it's in part because we have to have programs that protect the information that is given to us. And when we're talking about refugees, this is even more important. You're talking about people that may be running away from a particular situation where you don't want to give access to the information. As we're developing new tools, new ways, we always need to remember how are we protecting the information. So one tool we're using to try to facilitate resettlement is video conferencing with refugees. There are countries, so my team in Paris is involved in resettlement out of Libya. We cannot travel to Libya right now, so our interviews are done through video conferencing. And we're always careful to make sure that the tools we use offer this protection for the information of individuals who are, after all, running away from harm. The technology can help us process faster. But there are concerns raised when we talk about automation of decision, and I think it's important to understand which part of automated. Refugee processing used to take years to resettle someone when we sent letters to camps and all. We're now using the technology, and we're using automation of decision, not of the final decision, deciding do we take the refugee or not, but some administrative step, so that we're able to, in matters of months, move people around. And so I think it's important and the government has announced other programs where there were concerns from the community in Canada about what this would do for decisions on refugee application. We're treading carefully, piloting, testing things. We want to make sure that we're not opening ourselves, but also the life of people we're trying to protect into harm's way. So we're quite conscious about how to be careful with technology and to remember the individuals that we're trying to protect. Yes.
Firstly, I just shortly wanted to remark that I find it very nice how Alain, who wasn't here yesterday, intuitively said more or less the same thing that Mike said when he was opening, that the people are the goal of the help, and the tech is just the means. So this is perfectly in line. My organization hasn't phrased it that concisely, but I think we intuitively try to follow this. And to your actual question, you both mentioned the GDPR, and even yesterday, one of the questions from the audience, one of the persons asking mentioned that refugees are often afraid of sharing information about themselves, which is, I guess, understandable. And I just wanted to confirm that I think data protection and privacy is just the one biggest challenge there. In the case of this future project that we are going to carry out that I had mentioned earlier, we are obliged by the EU to adhere to the GDPR standards, which we gladly will do. So this issue of being respectful towards people's data is, I think, key.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I wish we had more time to ask more questions, but I can say the message that I got from this panel is no matter what kind of technology we use, it's always important to have human in the loop and also having a human contact and building trust and partnering with local community and people on the ground that they know what they're doing. Thank you so much to our speakers, and thank you to you for asking questions. Please help me say thank you to our speakers by your round of applause. Thanks.